They say children imagine things. But 9-year-old Iana did not imagine the moment she saw her soon-to-be stepmother sharpening a hidden blade on the night before the wedding. The wedding hall glittered with gold and laughter, but Iana's tiny heart thrashed like a trapped bird. She burst through the grand doors, her dress torn, her breath shaking. Guests gasped. Mireille froze at the altar. And Kofi, her father, turned pale as Iana grabbed his hand with trembling fingers. "Daddy!" Her voice cracked loud enough for the room to echo. "Don't marry her, please. She wants to hurt you tonight." A silence so heavy it felt like the entire world stopped breathing. Mireille's smile flickered. The guests whispered, and Kofi's soul quivered between truth and disbelief. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. And if you enjoy emotional African folktale dramas like this, feel free to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. 3 months before the wedding day, life in the Kofi household moved with the kind of quiet heaviness that comes after a great loss. The walls of the 2-story home in Kumasi still held the echo of laughter that once belonged to Ama Kofi's late wife and Iana's mother. Even though a year had passed, the memory of her still breathed in every hallway. And for 9-year-old Iana, the world had never felt the same. Kofi tried to move forward, but grief clung to him like a second skin. He poured himself into business meetings, late-night phone calls, and endless travel. On the outside, he appeared strong, always in elegant suits, always calm. But inside, he felt hollow, stripped of color. And the more he worked, the more he drifted away from the daughter who needed him most. One evening, while Iana sat at the dining table drawing her mother's favorite flowers, Kofi entered the house with a woman she had never seen before. She was beautiful in a polished, almost unreal way, smooth skin, red lipstick, fitted white dress, high heels that clicked sharply on the tiled floor. She greeted Iana with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "This is Miss Mireille," Kofi said, clearing his throat in a strange mixture of pride and nervousness. "She helped organize the charity gala today. She's been a great support." Mireille bent down slightly, placing her manicured hand on the table. "Hello, sweetheart. Your father talks about you all the time." That was a lie, Iana could tell instantly. Her father barely talked to her these days, let alone to strangers. Something in her, a child's instinct, ancient and sharp, whispered, "Be careful," but she only nodded politely. That night, while Kofi cooked dinner rare these days, Mireille stayed in the living room with Iana. "You know," she said, flipping through a magazine, "your father needs someone who truly understands him. Someone who can help him move on." Iana blinked. "Move on from what?" "From everything holding him back." Mireille tapped her nail against her chin, including distractions. Iana wasn't sure if she was the distraction Mireille meant, but she felt a coldness settle in her stomach. She excused herself quickly and went upstairs. For the first time since her mother died, she wished she could run into her arms and say something felt wrong. Over the next few weeks, Mireille became a frequent presence in their home. Too frequent. She rearranged furniture, suggested new routines, offered to help with Iana's school schedule. She brought expensive wine for Kofi and cheap toys for Iana, the kind that broke within hours. She laughed loudly at Kofi's jokes and barely noticed when Iana entered the room. It wasn't long before she began making small, cutting comments. "Iana, dear, maybe don't speak while adults are talking. Sweetheart, you should smile more. You look unfriendly when you're quiet. Kofi, she really should learn better manners. Perhaps she needs more discipline." Kofi, desperate to keep peace and fragile companionship, brushed the remarks aside. "She's still grieving," he would say. "She's just a child," he repeated often, though his tone weakened each time. And Mireille noticed that weakness. She fed it slowly. But the shift came one Saturday afternoon. Kofi was in the backyard fixing the fence while Iana sat on the porch drawing in her notebook. She watched as Mireille stepped outside with 2 glasses of lemonade. She gave one to Kofi and kept one for herself. Their conversation drifted through the air, light and cheerful at first. Then Kofi stepped away to take a work call. Mireille turned to Iana, her smile melting into a frown so sharp it could cut metal. "You know," she said in a low voice, "your father deserves peace, real peace. And I intend to give him that." Iana hesitated. "I want him to be happy." "Good." Mireille leaned closer. "Then stay out of the way." The girl's heart skipped. She didn't understand everything, but she understood the threat. Before she could respond, her father returned, and Mireille instantly switched back to sweetness, giggling as though nothing had happened. That night, Iana tried to tell him, "Daddy, I don't like Miss Mireille." Kofi sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. "Why, my angel? She's not nice when you're not there." He put his hands on her shoulders. "Iana, change can be uncomfortable at first." I know it's hard after losing Mom, but Muriel is trying. And you must try too. But Daddy, no more arguments. His tone was soft but firm. Please. For me. She nodded, though her chest felt tight like a rope was slowly wrapping around her ribs. The very next week, the situation escalated. Muriel showed up with new jewelry and a designer handbag, insisting she had bought them as treats after a long day. But Ayanna had seen her car parked behind a building earlier that day, an expensive restaurant where she had been talking to a man who didn't look like a friend. Their conversation was animated, urgent, and entirely secretive. Later that evening, while Kofi was cooking dinner again, Ayanna overheard something from the hallway. Muriel was on the phone in the guest room, her voice sharp and unfiltered. No, listen, he's perfect. Lonely, wealthy, desperate to belong to someone again. Yes, I'll handle the rest. We stick to the plan. Once everything is done, I'll get what's mine. He'll be out of the picture by then anyway. Out of the picture? The words echoed like thunder inside Ayanna's skull. Her palms went cold. Her knees wobbled. She almost dropped the glass she was holding. Muriel ended the call abruptly, and for a terrifying second, her heels clicked toward the door. Ayanna scrambled into the bathroom, shutting the door quietly just as Muriel passed. Her breath shook so violently she had to cover her mouth with both hands. That night she tried again to tell Kofi. Daddy, I heard something. I think Miss Muriel wants Ayanna, he said, voice already exhausted. Stop this. I know losing your mother has made you scared of change, but Muriel is not your enemy. But no more. His tone hardened. You're being unfair. And that was the moment something inside Ayanna broke. She felt the distance between them widening, her father slipping through her fingers, trusting someone who wanted to take him away forever. From that night onward, she watched Muriel more closely, like a small detective forced to grow up too fast. And the more she watched, the more she saw. The calls, the secret meetings, the strange coded messages, the empty expressions when Kofi wasn't looking, the smirk when he was. A storm was forming, one only she could see. And though she was just a little girl, she knew she had to stop it before it consumed her father completely. In the weeks that followed, the tension inside the house thickened like humidity before a violent storm. It clung to the walls, to the furniture, to Ayanna's small shoulders. She could feel it even when no one spoke. Muriel had begun weaving herself deeper into every corner of their lives so smoothly, so elegantly, that most adults would never have noticed the manipulation. But children notice things adults overlook. Children see the shifts in tone, the small flashes of anger, the moments between the lies, and Ayanna saw everything. One Sunday afternoon, Kofi decided to take both of them to lunch at a quiet garden restaurant. He hoped spending time together would ease the strain between the two most important people in his life, but things didn't unfold the way he imagined. The sun was warm, the flowers blooming, and birds hopped across the stone pathway. It should have been peaceful. But as soon as the waiter placed the menus on the table, Muriel leaned back with an exaggerated sigh and turned to Kofi. She didn't say good morning to me today, she complained softly, loud enough for Ayanna to hear. It breaks my heart that she hates me so much. Kofi frowned at his daughter. Ayanna, sweetheart, is that true? I didn't hate you, the girl replied quietly. I was just finishing my homework. I didn't see. Muriel placed a hand dramatically on her chest. You see, she always has an excuse. Kofi, I truly want to be a mother figure to her, but how can I if she refuses my kindness? A mother figure. The word stabbed Ayanna so sharply she had to blink back tears. How dare this woman try to replace her mother? How dare she pretend to care? Kofi sighed heavily, embarrassed by the tension. Let's just enjoy lunch. No more arguments. But the meal was an avalanche waiting to fall. Halfway through, while Kofi stepped away to take a business call, Muriel leaned across the table and whispered, if you keep making him unhappy, I will make your life very, very difficult. Ayanna tensed. I'm not trying to make anyone unhappy. You already have, Muriel replied calmly. But don't worry. When I marry your father, everything will be under control. She smiled a thin, chilling smile. Even you. When Kofi returned, she instantly switched back to her sweet persona, wiping imaginary tears from her eyes. I just wish she would accept me, she murmured. Kofi placed a hand on her shoulder sympathetically. Give her time. But something in his voice sounded unsure, like a man trying to convince himself more than the woman beside him. From that day, Muriel escalated her tactics. She began placing herself between father and daughter in increasingly subtle, yet strategic ways. When Ayanna ran to show Kofi her school project, Muriel appeared instantly with news about the wedding plans. When Ayanna asked for help with homework, Muriel reminded Kofi that they had a dinner reservation. When Kofi promised to take Ayanna to the museum on Saturday, Muriel suddenly fell ill, clutching her head dramatically until he canceled. It was psychological warfare waged by a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. One particular evening, the situation tipped into danger. Kofi was in the study working on some documents while Ayana sat in the living room reading a comic book. Muriel entered the room carrying a decorative glass bowl filled with fruits. She placed it on the table and then with a sudden gasp let it slip from her hands. It shattered loudly across the floor. "What did you do?" Muriel shrieked. I didn't touch anything," Ayana cried, startled. Muriel raised her voice to a level she had never used in front of Kofi before. Kofi, come here." He rushed in immediately, alarmed. "What's wrong?" This child pushed the bowl, Muriel accused, pointing at the broken glass. "It almost cut my foot, I didn't," Ayana shouted, face flushed with fear. "I was sitting right here. Are you calling me a liar?" Muriel's snapped voice trembling as if she were deeply hurt. Kofi rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Ayana, this is the second time something like this has happened, but Daddy, I didn't do it," Muriel sniffed. "Kofi, she hates me. She's trying to sabotage everything." The room felt like it was shrinking. Ayana's vision blurred with tears. Kofi knelt beside her, his voice gentle but distant. "Sweetheart, you have to try harder. Muriel is trying." "No, she's not," Ayana cried. "She hates me. She says things. She lies. That's enough." His tone cut like a blade. "I'm disappointed in you tonight." Those words were heavier than any punishment. He had never said those words to her, not even once. Muriel's eyes gleamed triumphantly. Later that night, after Kofi went to bed, exhausted, Muriel found Ayana sitting alone in her room hugging a worn-out teddy bear. She closed the door quietly behind her. "You're losing," she whispered, leaning against the wall. "And soon you'll have no place in this house." Ayana's throat tightened. "My daddy loves me." Muriel chuckled softly. "Your father is lonely. And lonely men make useful decisions. Once we're married, I will decide how things run, including how you behave, or don't." The implication froze Ayana's bones. "What do you want from him?" the girl managed to whisper. "Everything," Muriel breathed, stepping closer. "All of it. And after I get what I want, well, I won't need him anymore." Her voice was chillingly matter-of-fact, like she was describing the weather. "But you," she continued, brushing her nail lightly along the doorframe, "you're a complication, and complications need to be handled." The door clicked shut behind her as she left, leaving Ayana shaking under her blanket, trying not to sob too loudly. From that night, Ayana rarely slept peacefully. The threats replayed in her mind. The lies, the manipulation, the feeling of losing her father to a woman she knew was dangerous. But fear alone didn't define her. She had courage, her mother's courage. And she began following Muriel more closely, silently observing everything. She noticed how Muriel always stepped away from the house whenever she needed to take certain calls. She noticed the coded phrases "progress, timing, final night." She noticed the increasing desperation on Muriel's face whenever Kofi mentioned signing financial documents for the wedding. And then came the day that changed everything. One afternoon while walking back from school, Ayana saw a familiar white SUV parked behind a small cafe. Muriel's SUV. She moved closer, hiding behind a hedge. Through the cafe window, she saw Muriel speaking to a man tall, well-dressed with a scar on his jaw. Their conversation looked tense. The man slammed his hand on the table. Muriel hissed something back, her eyes cold. Ayana leaned in as close as she could without being spotted. And that was when she heard it. "The wedding must happen," the man muttered. "Once you have access, we proceed that night. No mistakes. We cannot let him survive long enough to suspect you." Ayana's breath seized. That night, they were planning something for the night of the wedding. The realization exploded inside her like fire. She stumbled back, covering her mouth to silence her gasp. At that moment, the man's eyes shot toward the window. Ayana ducked just in time. She crawled away from the hedge, trembling violently, her heart pounding against her ribs. She didn't know how, she didn't know when, but she knew something monstrous was coming. And she knew she had to stop it. Even if no one believed her, even if she had to stand alone. From the moment Ayana overheard that terrifying conversation at the cafe, the world around her stopped feeling like a home and started feeling like a countdown. Every tick of the clock, every passing day, every forced smile from Muriel felt like another step closer to disaster. She wanted to scream the truth, to grab her father by the shoulders and shake him awake, but she painfully knew that he wouldn't believe her. Not anymore. Muriel had woven herself so tightly around his trust that every warning sounded like a child's jealousy in his ears. Still, Ayana refused to give up. She watched, listened, and collected every tiny abnormality she could find. She waited for an opportunity, a moment when the truth might finally break through her father's blindness. That moment almost came sooner than she expected. One late afternoon, as the sun began sinking behind the mango trees, painting the sky, Orange Kofi returned from work earlier than usual. His car pulled into the driveway while Mireille was outside talking urgently on the phone. She didn't notice him at first. Her voice was sharp, angry, nothing like the sweet, gentle tone she always used around him. "No, you listen to me," she hissed. "The wedding cannot be delayed. He's signing the last documents this week, and once he does, everything moves fast. I told you I have him wrapped around my finger. The daughter, she's nothing. A small inconvenience I'll handle soon." Kofi froze. He didn't understand the context, but the hostility in her voice unsettled him deeply. He stayed silent, listening, but Mireille caught a glimpse of his reflection in the window. She turned instantly, wearing shock and vulnerability like a mask she could slip on in a heartbeat. "Kofi!" she exclaimed, pressing a hand to her chest as if startled. "I didn't hear you drive in." He stepped forward slowly. "Who were you talking to?" "Oh, a friend. She's dealing with a breakup, she's emotional, you know how people get," Mireille said, managing a soft laugh. "I was just giving her advice. Her explanation was smooth, far too smooth." Kofi wanted to question her further, but guilt stabbed him the moment he opened his mouth. This woman had been nothing but supportive, caring, attentive. She had helped him rediscover joy after years of grief. Or so he believed. "I'm sorry," he murmured, forcing a smile. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop." She closed the distance between them and wrapped her arms around him. "It's okay, love. I understand. You've had a long week." Ayana watched all of this unfold from the upstairs hallway, clutching the railing. She saw everything, the flash of panic in Mireille's eyes before she replaced it with affection, the way Kofi melted under her touch, the subtle relief on Mireille's face when she realized he wasn't suspicious enough to dig deeper. It made Ayana's stomach twist painfully. Later that night, she tried once again to talk to him. She knocked gently on his study door, hugging her notebook tightly. Daddy Kofi looked up from his laptop. "Yes," Angel Ayana stepped inside cautiously. I need to tell you something important. Please don't get upset." He sighed, already sensing where this was going. "Is it about Mireille?" She nodded. "Sweetheart," he said, shutting the laptop, "I know you've been struggling with all these changes. Losing your mother was hard on both of us. I'm not talking about Mommy," she cried out, surprising even herself. "I'm talking about what I heard today." Kofi frowned. "What did you hear?" She was on the phone outside. "She said she'd handle me. She said you were wrapped around her finger. Daddy, she doesn't love you. She wants something else." A long, tired silence filled the room. Kofi rubbed his forehead. "Ayana, you must stop this. You're misinterpreting things." "I'm not." "She said the wedding can't be delayed," she said. "Ayana." His voice rose sharply. "Enough." The girl flinched, tears springing to her eyes instantly. He softened a bit but didn't back down. "I want you to stop spying on Mireille. She has been patient with you, but you're making it difficult. You're hurting her feelings." "What about my feelings?" Ayana whispered. "What about yours? If she hurts you, Daddy, she's dangerous." He stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "Go to your room." "But now." The sound of that single word crushed her. She turned away, walking slowly toward the door. Before stepping out, she looked over her shoulder with trembling lips. "When everything goes wrong," she said quietly, "you'll wish you listened." Kofi didn't respond. He couldn't. His mind was tangled in conflict. Logic told him to trust his daughter, but loneliness whispered something different, something softer, something foolish. After she left, the room felt colder. The following days were worse. Mireille, sensing that Ayana was becoming a threat, increased her manipulation. She feigned concern around Kofi, claiming she felt unsafe because Ayana watched her like a predator. She pretended to cry when he was near, claimed Ayana pushed her once, claimed she heard the girl call her names. All lies. All carefully timed. And Kofi believed almost every word. But the tipping point came one windy evening. A storm was gathering outside, thunder rumbling like angry drums. Mireille walked into the kitchen, holding her wrist dramatically. "Kofi," she whimpered, "Ayana hurt me." He spun around. "What? How?" She slammed the bedroom door into my arm. "I was trying to talk to her nicely." "That's not true," Ayana shouted from the hallway. "I didn't even touch the door. She walked into it herself." Kofi looked between them, unsure, overwhelmed. Mireille sobbed harder. "I'm scared of your daughter. How can I marry a man whose child hates me this much?" And that right there was what finally pushed him too far. "Everyone calm down," Kofi said sternly. "Ina, go to your room. I need to think. But Daddy, now. She ran upstairs, tears blurring her vision. She shut herself in her room and curled on the floor, hugging her knees. The storm outside was nothing compared to the storm tearing through her tiny chest. Mireille had won. She had truly won. And no one, absolutely no one, would listen. But something changed that night. Later, after the storm died and the house fell silent, Iana crept out of her room to get a glass of water. As she passed the guest room, she heard whispers inside. The door was slightly ajar. She peeked through the gap. There was Mireille on the phone again. "We move as soon as the papers are signed," she murmured coldly. "Yes, the night of the wedding. That's when he'll be alone. Stop worrying, I have full access now. He trusts me more than he trusts anyone else." The daughter. "She's become a problem, but I'll deal with her soon. Focus on our end, and remember, no mistakes this time." Iana's hand flew to her mouth. The words clawed into her spine like ice. This wasn't jealousy. This wasn't selfishness. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was real. Her father was in danger, and she was the only person who knew the truth. She backed away quietly, tiptoeing up the stairs. But with each step, her fear hardened into determination. Her mother once told her that bravery wasn't the absence of fear, but doing the right thing even when fear threatened to swallow you whole. So that night, as thunder rolled far away and her father slept unknowingly beside a woman plotting his death, 9-year-old Iana made a decision. She would save him, no matter what it cost. Even if she had to stand against Mireille alone. The next morning arrived with a deceptive softness. Birds chirped in the garden, sunlight spilled through the windows, and the house smelled faintly of the hot cocoa Kofi always made for Iana before school, except he hadn't made it in weeks. Not since Mireille began her quiet conquest. Still, the world outside pretended everything was normal. Only inside the house did the air feel heavy, stifling, charged with the tension of secrets Iana carried alone. She woke with the previous night replaying in her mind the whispered plan, the deadly certainty in Mireille's voice, the assurance that Kofi wouldn't survive the wedding night. It churned inside her chest like a bruise that refused to fade. When she came downstairs, she saw Kofi and Mireille sitting at the dining table. They looked up as she approached, but the atmosphere was wrong too, still too expectant, like they had been waiting for her. "Morning, sweetheart," Kofi said gently, though fatigue lined his face. "Come sit." Iana hesitated. Mireille's gaze was soft, sweet, calculated. Kofi continued, "We need to talk." The words made her stomach twist, but she pulled out a chair and sat across from them. Mireille laced her fingers together with a concerned sigh. "Iana, I want us to get along. I really do. But lately, things have been difficult. Difficult. As if she wasn't the one causing the chaos." Kofi nodded, rubbing his temples. "Your behavior has been troubling, Angel. You've been accusing Mireille spying on her, making dramatic statements. That's not like you. I'm trying to protect you," she whispered. "Protect me from what?" he asked, frustration creeping in. From a woman who has only shown kindness, Iana felt her throat tighten. "You don't understand. She's lying to you." Mireille let out a shaky breath, wiping imaginary tears. "Kofi, maybe we should postpone the wedding. I don't want her to feel threatened." "No." The panic in Iana's voice startled even herself. "Postpone it. Yes, Daddy, please postpone it." Mireille blinked slowly, her eyes narrowing just slightly, an expression so brief only Iana noticed. Kofi sighed deeply. "We're not postponing anything. We just need to create peace." Peace. The word felt like a cruel joke. "From now on," he continued, "I want you to treat Mireille with respect. No more accusations. No more stories." "They're not stories," she whispered. "Iana," he said firmly, "please, I need you to trust me." The words were final, a verdict, a dismissal. And that was when Mireille placed her hand over his, anchoring him like a possession, and smiled sympathetically at Iana. "I believe in a fresh start," she said smoothly. "Let's begin again today. No grudges." But Iana saw the threat hidden behind the sweetness. When the conversation ended, she dragged herself upstairs, fighting back tears. She didn't want to cry anymore. Crying only made her feel smaller. She needed to be stronger, brave, clever. If adults refused to see the truth, she would have to find proof they could not ignore. That afternoon, while Kofi went to a business meeting, Mireille remained at home. She offered to bake cookies with Iana, a gesture so obviously fake it made bile rise in the girl's throat. But she pretended to go along with it, because the more time she spent near Mireille, the more chances she might have to uncover the truth. Mireille measured flour with meticulous precision, humming softly. You know, she said lightly, my life wasn't easy. I had to fight for everything. Maybe that's why you think I come across too strong. You come across as a liar, Iana said before she could stop herself. The humming stopped. Slowly, Mireille set the bowl down, wiped her hands, and looked straight into Iana's eyes. The softness vanished. What remained was sharp, cold, lethal. You need to be very careful, she murmured. Your father loves me. He trusts me. And trust is power. She stepped closer. Iana stepped back instinctively. If you get in my way, Mireille whispered, her voice smooth as poison, I will make sure he thinks you're the problem. Not me. Children aren't believed easily. Adults, however, are. Iana's heart pounded. Why are you doing this? Why do you want to marry him? If you don't even love him, I don't need to love him, she said simply. I need what he has. And after I get it, your father's purpose will be fulfilled. You mean you'll hurt him, Iana said, voice trembling. Mireille tilted her head. I mean, he won't be a burden. A tear slipped down Iana's cheek. But she didn't run, she didn't scream. She just stared back, gathering every ounce of courage she had. You won't get away with this. Mireille's lips curled. Watch me. The rest of the day passed like a nightmare on repeat. Every time the girl tried to stay out of Mireille's way, the woman found excuses to corner her, slipping venom into her words, warning her to stay silent, reminding her that no one would believe a child over an adult. By evening, Kofi returned cheerful and oblivious. He kissed Mireille on the cheek and asked about dinner. She responded with a sweet voice, a laugh of pure innocence. Then she said she had a surprise appointment and left the house. That word appointment sent a chill running down Iana's spine. The moment Mireille's car drove away, Iana hurried downstairs. She peeked through the blinds to make sure the vehicle had disappeared, then ran into the garage. Kofi kept a spare motorcycle helmet on a shelf and a bicycle leaning against the wall. She grabbed the bike and pedaled as fast as her legs could move. She didn't know exactly where Mireille was going, but she knew one thing. When adults planned evil, they hid in quiet places. And Mireille had a favorite, an abandoned community center near the edge of town. By the time she reached it, sweat trickled down her back and her legs ached. She hid behind a crumbling wall, peering into the cracked window. There she was. Mireille stood inside, her arms crossed, facing the same man from the cafe, the one with the scar on his jaw. His voice rumbled through the room. She's becoming a problem, he said. The kid. I'll handle her, Mireille said coldly. After the wedding, you'd better, the man replied. I don't want anything interfering with the plan. Once the funds transfer, we disappear. He dies. That's the deal. Iana gasped. She clamped a hand over her mouth immediately, but it was too late. The man's head snapped toward the window. Mireille turned sharply. Did you hear that? She whispered. No, wait, someone's there. Footsteps thundered toward the door. Iana ran. She jumped on her bicycle and fled through the narrow alleys behind the center. Her legs burned, her breath shredded her throat, the wind slapped tears from her eyes. But she didn't stop. Not even when she heard a car engine start behind her. Not even when headlights flashed across her back. She took 2 sharp turns, then ducked into a narrow walkway between 2 houses. Mireille's car raced past the main road, unable to follow. Only when silence fell again did Iana collapse beside her bike, sobbing. Her entire body shook with fear, but beneath that fear was certainty. She had heard enough. This wasn't paranoia, this wasn't jealousy, this was real. And no one, not even her father, could ignore it now. But when she returned home panting and disheveled, Kofi was waiting in the driveway. Where were you? He asked, alarmed. I was following her. His expression darkened instantly. Iana, we discussed this. Why can't you behave? She's planning to hurt you, Iana cried. I heard her again, she said. Kofi raised a hand. Stop. Just stop. But Daddy, no more lies, he snapped. You're grounded for the rest of the week. Her mouth fell open. I'm trying to save you. He shook his head, disappointed. Go to your room. And just like that, the last hope she had that maybe he would finally listen crumbled. But despair didn't win. Not tonight. Because as Iana climbed the stairs, tears streaming down her cheeks, a new resolve took root inside her. If her father wouldn't believe her, she would find someone who would. Someone with authority. Someone Mireille couldn't manipulate. Someone who could help her gather the evidence she needed. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand and whispered to herself, I will stop her. I will. Because a child who knows danger is coming is not powerless. She becomes the warning the world refuses to hear. And sometimes, she becomes the only hope left. The next morning arrived with a gray sky, that seemed to echo the heaviness pressing onto Iana's small heart. She barely slept. Every time her eyes closed, she heard Miray's voice again, cold, sharp, promising harm. She saw her father's face too tired and disappointed, convinced she was lying. That hurt more than anything else. But today would be different. She would not sit quietly and watch danger walk into their home. She would fight. As sunlight crept through her curtains, she quietly got dressed, tying her shoelaces with trembling hands. She had made up her mind if her father wouldn't believe her, she needed someone he would listen to. Someone who cared about him. Someone who might see what she saw. There was only one person, Auntie Adwoa, her father's older sister. Adwoa didn't visit often because she lived in another town, but she loved Iana fiercely and had always been skeptical of Miray from their very first meeting. There is something too smooth about that woman, she once murmured. People who shine too brightly tend to hide the darkest stains. Iana clung to those words now like a lifeline. She grabbed her backpack stuffed inside the notebook where she had recorded everything she'd overheard and slipped downstairs. The house was quiet, Kofi was still asleep, and Miray had spent the night out, claiming she had urgent wedding arrangements. Iana knew better. She knew exactly what kind of arrangements Miray had been making in the dark. She pushed her bike onto the driveway and pedaled hard, fueled by fear and desperation. The ride to the bus terminal felt endless, every corner haunted by the fear of Miray's car appearing behind her again, but she reached it safely. Auntie Adwoa arrived 2 hours later, stepping off the bus with her handbag and a stern expression. Her dark eyes scanned the platform until she spotted Iana standing alone, gripping her backpack straps tightly. Child, Adwoa said, hurrying forward. Why did you call me, sounding like the sky was falling? What's wrong? Iana didn't answer. She just threw herself into her aunt's arms, sobbing with the force of everything she'd held in for weeks. Adwoa's face hardened. Tell me everything. And so they sat on a bench beneath the shade of a large frangipani tree, and Iana explained everything, every overheard whisper, every lie, every threat, every plan she had pieced together. She told her about the man with the scar, the abandoned community center, the wedding night plan. Instead of brushing it off like Kofi had, Adwoa leaned in closer with each detail, her features growing more and more grim. When the girl finished trembling, Adwoa spoke in a low, determined voice. You did the right thing coming to me. I've been uneasy about that woman since the day she walked into your lives. And now I have proof my instincts were right. Do you believe me? Iana whispered. Absolutely, Adwoa said without hesitation. And we'll put a stop to this. It felt like a mountain had lifted off her chest. But their battle was far from over. Adwoa took Iana to her car, locking the doors immediately. We're not going back home yet. Not until we find evidence strong enough to wake your father from this spell. The word spell made Iana shiver. Because that was exactly what it felt like. Kofi was trapped, blinded by loneliness, desperate for companionship, vulnerable to a woman like Miray. They drove to the abandoned community center first. The building looked different in the daylight, less threatening but still eerie. The windows were dusty, the paint peeling the air, smelling like damp wood and neglect. Stay close, Adwoa said. Inside the room where Miray had met the man with the scar was empty, but not completely. Adwoa spotted something on the floor. A printed document with a logo belonging to a high-end financial consultancy company. Most of the text was blurred by dirt, but one line caught her eyes. Transfer ownership upon union. Another line, guaranteed access upon signature. Her jaw clenched. She wants control of everything your father owns the moment the marriage certificate is signed. That means the wedding, Iana whispered. That's why she said it can't be delayed. Yes, Adwoa murmured. She's cornering him. They continued searching and found another clue, an envelope with a false name printed on it, addressed to an offshore account. It contained nothing else, but the implication was clear. They returned to the car, uncertain but hopeful. Yet something nagged at Iana. Wait, she murmured. The man. He said something about no mistakes this time. What did he mean? Adwoa's eyes narrowed. It means this isn't her first time. A chill gnawed at Iana's spine. Adwoa started the engine. We're visiting someone else. Who? An old friend, she replied, a retired police officer. Kwabena Mensah. Iana's heart fluttered. A police officer meant someone who could finally do something. When they arrived at the officer's home, the man looked both surprised and concerned to see Adwoa at his door. He welcomed them inside, listening intently as she explained the situation. His weathered face grew darker with every detail. After a long pause, he opened a drawer and pulled out a file. You said her name is Miray, he asked. Yes, Iana said, clutching her backpack. He thumbed through several documents, then found something and placed it gently on the table. I don't know if this is the same woman, Mensa said, but 5 years ago a wealthy widower died under suspicious circumstances. The main suspect was the woman he was engaged to, a woman named Mireille Decora. She vanished before the case could be taken to court. Silence struck the room like lightning. Adwa inhaled sharply. She changed her name. She always does, Mensa murmured. She reinvents herself and targets vulnerable men. It's a pattern, a dangerous one. A wave of nausea hit Iana. And Daddy? He's next, Mensa nodded solemnly. Unless we act fast. They collected copies of the documents and prepared to go straight to Kofi. On the way back, the weight of the truth pressed heavily on Iana's chest. For the first time since her mother died, she felt the terrifying reality that she might lose her father too. Not to grief, but to a woman with ice in her veins and death in her plans. But she wasn't powerless anymore. She had proof. She had help. She had her aunt. She had a retired officer ready to intervene. For the first time in months, hope flickered. As they drove toward the Kofi household, the sky began to shift from gray to a bruised shade of purple, signaling evening. Lights flickered on in houses along the road. The world began to quiet, but danger did not. When they pulled up to the house, the driveway was empty. Kofi's car was gone. Mireille's too. Where are they? Iana whispered. Then a sudden realization slammed into her chest. Today is the final meeting with the wedding planner. Daddy said it's important, and she's with him. Adwoa finished. Their eyes met with shared fear. She might move early, Mensa said. They rushed back into the car and accelerated toward the event venue. Iana gripped the seat, praying with every beat of her heart. Please be safe. Please be safe. Please be safe. As they approached the venue, something felt wrong the moment they saw it. The parking lot was almost empty. Too empty. And the building lights were dim. Stay behind me, Mensa instructed, stepping out. But before he reached the entrance, a sound echoed from inside. A sharp, blood-freezing scream. It was Kofi's. Daddy Iana shrieked, sprinting toward the door before anyone could stop her. Because if they were even a second too late, she might lose him forever. The scream tore through the empty event hall like a blade. It wasn't the kind of scream someone made when startled. It was raw, sharp, filled with terror, a cry from someone who finally realized danger was standing right in front of him. Daddy Iana shouted again as she sprinted toward the large double doors. Iana, wait, Adwoa cried out. But the girl's legs were fueled by fear, love, and pure instinct. Nothing could have stopped her. She pushed the heavy doors open, breath-shaking heart pounding so violently it felt like it might burst from her chest. The hall was dark, only a few emergency lights glowed, faintly casting everything in eerie shadows. Chairs were overturned. A glass vase lay shattered on the floor. Something terrible had happened here. Kofi Mensa shouted as he followed behind. Their voices echoed unanswered. Iana ran deeper inside, scanning every corner until her eyes landed on a horrifying sight. Kofi lay on the ground near the stage, one hand pressed to the side of his neck, his face pale and twisted with pain. Beside him stood Mireille, but gone was the elegant, soft-spoken woman everyone knew. Her eyes were wild, her lipstick smudged, her hair disheveled, and in her hand gleamed a small silver knife. Daddy Iana shrieked, racing toward him. Mireille snapped her head toward the child, her face warping into a twisted smile. Well, look who arrived just in time. Mensa rushed forward, gun drawn, but Mireille moved with animalistic speed. She grabbed Kofi by the collar and yanked him upright, pressing the knife to his throat. Not one step closer, she screamed. Kofi Adwa gasped, hand flying to her mouth. Mensa raised both hands slowly. Mireille dropped the weapon. You can walk away from this alive, but if you hurt him, she snarled. That was always the plan. Kofi winced, coughing weakly. The cut on his neck wasn't deep, but it bled enough to show Mireille meant business. Mireille, he whispered, voice trembling, why are you doing this? Oh, Kofi, she scoffed. You really thought I loved you. You thought I wasted months pretending to care because I wanted you. Her laughter filled the hall, a sharp, bitter sound filled with hatred. No, I wanted your money, and you made it so easy. So desperate. So stupid. Kofi's face collapsed in disbelief and agony, not from the knife, but from betrayal. But I would have waited until tonight, she continued through clenched teeth, if your daughter hadn't kept interfering. Her eyes locked onto Iana with burning fury. This is your fault, little rat. Iana trembled, but she didn't back away. Let him go. You should have stayed quiet, Mireille hissed. But no, you went snooping. You told people. You followed me like a parasite. Adwo stepped forward. She's a child, she's a nuisance, Mireille snapped. She pressed the blade harder. A thin line of blood trickled down Kofi's neck. "Stop," Iana cried. "Please stop," Mensah tried again, voice calm. "Mireille, listen. There are security cameras everywhere. Every move you make is being recorded." Mireille laughed again. "You think I care about cameras? I disabled them before he arrived. I planned everything." She moved backward, dragging Kofi with her toward the side door. "She's trying to escape," Mensah muttered. "Don't move," she shouted, jerking Kofi. "I swear I will slit his throat." Iana froze, tears streaming down her cheeks. Kofi managed to speak, his voice shaking. "Iana, go. Don't watch this." "No," she sobbed. "I'm not leaving you." Her words broke something inside Mireille. "You just don't stop, do you?" Mireille hissed. "I should have handled you days ago." Then she lunged forward, but not toward Kofi, toward Iana. "No," Adwoa screamed. The world became a blur. Mireille broke away from Kofi and charged with the knife eyes blazing with murderous rage. Iana stumbled backward, tripping over a fallen chair. The blade flashed under the emergency lights as Mireille raised it. Then bang! The sound cracked through the hall like thunder. Mireille's scream tore through the air as she fell to the floor, clutching her shoulder. The knife clattered away, spinning across the tiles. Mensah stood firmly, gun still raised, his face steeled with resolve. "Move!" he barked. Adwo rushed to Iana, pulling her into her arms as the girl sobbed uncontrollably. Kofi collapsed against a pillar, panting, staring at the scene in pure shock. Blood dripped down his neck, but the wound was no longer life-threatening. Mensah approached cautiously, kicking the knife farther away. Mireille writhed on the floor, cursing, her face twisted with hatred. "You ruined everything," she shrieked. "All of you." Mensah cuffed her wrists while she thrashed violently. "You think this ends here?" she spat. "There are others. You don't even know." "Save your breath," Mensah muttered. She screamed until her voice cracked. Paramedics and police sirens arrived within minutes, drawn by Mensah's call moments before entering the hall. As officers dragged Mireille away, she turned her head, locking eyes with Iana one last time. "This isn't over," she whispered. But it was. It was over for her. The moment she was gone, the hall finally felt like it could breathe again. Kofi staggered to his feet, stumbling toward his daughter. His whole body shook as he knelt in front of her. "Iana," he whispered hoarsely, voice breaking. "My baby? I'm so sorry." She cried into his chest as his arms wrapped around her tightly. For the first time in months, he held her like he had once held her when she was tiny, protective, desperate, grateful she was alive. "I should have listened," he sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." She clung to him, shaking. "I told you, Daddy. I tried. I know," he murmured. "You were right. You were brave. You saved my life." Adwoa placed a trembling hand on both of them, her eyes glistening with tears. "She saved more than your life, Kofi. She saved your future." They stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped in the relief that they had survived something unimaginable. When the paramedics finished tending to Kofi's wound and declared him stable, the little family walked out of the event hall together, shaken, exhausted, but no longer broken. Outside, the sky had cleared. The storm clouds were gone. A faint streak of sunrise lit the horizon. Though dawn was still hours away, it felt symbolic, a new beginning. Kofi lifted Iana into his arms, holding her as though she might disappear if he blinked. From now on, he whispered into her hair, "I'll never doubt you again. You are all I have, all I need." Iana closed her eyes, finally letting herself feel safe. But as they walked to the waiting ambulance, a thought nudged the edge of her mind, a realization she couldn't ignore. What Mireille said before being dragged away, "There are others." Iana clutched her father tighter. Something told her this story wasn't finished. But for now, for the first time in months, she could breathe. The night after the attack felt longer than any night Iana had ever lived through. Even after the police had taken Mireille away, even after the ambulance cleaned Kofi's wound and declared him physically safe, the shadows of what almost happened lingered in every breath, every heartbeat, every shaky step. They stayed at the hospital until dawn. Kofi sat upright in the hospital bed, despite the doctor telling him to rest one arm, wrapped tightly around Iana as though afraid she might vanish. His eyes rarely left her for more than a second. If she shifted, he looked. If she exhaled, he looked. If she blinked a little too slowly, he shook her gently, making sure she was still there. It was guilt. It was fear. It was love drenched in regret. And it made Iana's little chest ache. "Daddy," she whispered softly, "I'm not going anywhere." He swallowed hard and buried his face in her hair. "I thought I almost lost you tonight. I thought I almost lost you, she whispered back. Auntie Adwo sat beside the bed, her back straight, eyes sharp with protective fire, even despite the exhaustion settling into her bones. Mensa stood near the doorway speaking to an officer, handing over evidence they'd collected, documents, files, the audio recorder that captured Morale's last threatening words before the attack. But even as officers left and nurses came to check on Kofi, even as the hospital slowly began to wake with morning activity, a strange heaviness continued clinging to the air. Eventually, an officer returned, a tall woman named Inspector Ayu, with a folder in hand, and seriousness etched across her face. Kofi, she greeted, I'm glad you're stable. He nodded tiredly. Thank you. Ayu took a deep breath before proceeding. We apprehended Morale and the man she called Kweku the Scar at the venue. Both are in custody. However, the slight pause made everyone in the room stiffen. However, what? Adwoa asked sharply. Ayu opened the folder. Both individuals were part of a known con group operating across several regions. Their tactics are always the same: target widows or widowers, infiltrate their lives, emotionally obtain financial access, and then eliminate them. Kofi's breaths quickened. They've been connected. Ayu continued, to 2 unsolved cases. Both victims died under suspicious circumstances, shortly after transferring assets to romantic partners. So, Morale, Kofi whispered slowly, piecing it together. This wasn't random. She planned this long before we even met. Ayu nodded grimly. She's extremely smart, dangerous, and manipulative. Iana pressed her head against her father's chest, gripping his shirt. The confirmation made her feel both vindicated and sick at the same time. She had known deep inside her bones that something wasn't right. But hearing it from a police inspector made the danger feel heavier, more real, more terrifying. Ayu continued, but there's something else. Something we found when searching Morale's belongings. She pulled out a worn leather journal. A chill spread through the room. This belonged to her, Ayu said. Inside are details of her past marks. Their weaknesses, their routines, their financial records. She looked at Kofi. You were studied. Kofi felt his throat close. That's not the worst part, Ayu added quietly. There were notes about Iana. Silence fell so thick it choked the air. Kofi's face drained of color. What? What about my daughter? Ayu hesitated, not because she doubted, but because the truth was cruel. She wrote that Iana was an obstacle, a threat. And Ayu flipped the page, jaw clenching, expendable. Kofi tightened his arms around his daughter, holding her as though the world was trying to steal her away. My God, Iana stayed still, small and silent, but tears formed in her eyes. Ayu continued, the only reason the plan wasn't executed earlier is because Mireille realized Iana suspected her. It made her angry, reckless. That recklessness is what ultimately saved you both. Mensa nodded. The child saw what adults often refuse to see. Ayu closed the folder. We'll need Kofi and Iana to come to the station tomorrow for formal statements. But for now, rest. You're safe. Safe. The word echoed in Iana's mind, but she wasn't sure she believed it. Mireille was behind bars, but the fear she planted inside Iana had roots deeper than the threat itself. The memory of her charging with the knife replayed again and again. After Ayu left, the room fell quiet, except for the soft beeping of a machine near the bed. Adwo finally spoke. Kofi, I tried to warn you. I felt something wasn't right. He nodded slowly, shame washing over him. I know, I was tired of feeling alone. I thought letting someone in would fix things. It almost destroyed everything, Adwo whispered. Kofi looked down at Iana. Her eyelids drooped with exhaustion, her small body curled against him like she was 6 years old again. He stroked her hair gently. I should have believed her, he murmured. She tried so hard to protect me, and I pushed her away. No, Iana whispered sleepily. I didn't protect you, we protected each other. Kofi broke. He pressed his forehead to hers, tears falling silently. By morning, the doctors discharged Kofi with strict instructions to rest. Adwoa drove them home. Iana sat in the back seat staring out the window as the familiar streets passed by, yet everything felt different now. When they entered the house, the silence hit them first. Morale's scent still lingered faintly, a mix of expensive perfume and cold calculation. Her shoes were still by the door. Her scarf still draped over the chair. The wine glass she used last night remained on the counter with lipstick on the rim. Iana shivered. Adwo walked ahead, gathering everything that belonged to Morale into a trash bag. She stuffed in scarves, jewelry boxes, shoes, perfumes, every trace of the woman who had nearly destroyed them. Kofi stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the space she used to occupy. He felt revolted by how much control he'd given her, ashamed of how blind he had been. Then he turned to his daughter. "Ayana," he said softly. She looked up. "From today, no secrets, no hiding, no shutting each other out." He knelt down. "I'll listen. Always." She nodded. "I'll talk. Always." And he embraced her again. But peace didn't last long. That night after dinner, the doorbell rang. Adwo opened the door. Inspector Ayu stood there, her face grim. "Kofi! Ayana! I need to speak with you." Fear surged instantly. "What happened?" Kofi demanded. Ayu stepped inside. Mireille escaped. The room went silent. She escaped custody during the transfer to a higher security facility. The vehicle was ambushed by unknown accomplices. 3 officers were injured. Adwa covered her mouth in shock. Kofi grabbed Ayana, instinctively holding her behind him. Ayu continued, "We are placing security around your home immediately, but you need to know." She hesitated, then added, "Mireille wasn't fleeing. She was trying to finish what she started." Ayana's breath hitched. "She left something behind in the abandoned vehicle," Ayu said. "A note." She handed it to Kofi. His hands shook as he unfolded it. 4 words stared back at him in sharp, angry handwriting: "I will come back." A chill swept through the room. Ayu placed a firm hand on her belt. "Until she is caught, none of you can be alone. She is dangerous, unpredictable, and furious." Ayana clutched her father, her heartbeat racing. She thought everything was over. She thought the nightmare had ended. But now, it was only beginning again. The note felt colder than the night air outside. Kofi stared at the 4 words for a long, terrible moment, as if by staring hard enough he could erase them. But they remained sharp, cruel, dripping with the promise of vengeance. "I will come back." It wasn't just a threat, it was a vow. Ayana felt her knees weaken. She clung to her father's shirt, her fingers trembling. Auntie Adwa stepped closer, her protective instincts blazing. "When did she escape?" Adwa demanded. Inspector Ayu exhaled heavily. "An hour ago, the transfer had barely begun. She must have had someone watching the station, someone loyal, someone she'd manipulated before." "She has accomplices?" Kofi asked, voice cracking with a mix of disbelief and dread. Ayu nodded. "Criminals like her never work alone. They convince, seduce, deceive. Someone, possibly more than one person, helped her escape." The room filled with a tense silence. Outside the window storm, clouds gathered again, as if the sky itself sensed the danger returning. Ayu continued, "We're assigning 2 officers to stay outside your house in shifts. No one comes in or out without being checked. Keep your doors locked, curtains closed, and lights on at all times." "But she knows this house," Ayana whispered. "She knows everything." "She knows too much," Kofi added, his voice quiet, pained. "Everything I told her, everything she watched, every routine." Ayu nodded. "That's why we need to break the routine." She's expecting predictability. "Instead, we'll move you somewhere safe tonight." Kofi frowned. "Safe where?" "A protected facility on the outskirts of town," Ayu said. "High surveillance, secure entrances. No one gets in without clearance." Ayana's heart raced. The idea of leaving home felt strange, but staying felt deadly. Every shadow on the walls seemed to shift under her gaze. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Every whisper of wind felt like someone breathing outside the windows. A wave of memory hit her, Mireille's cold smile, the knife in her hand, the rage on her face. She grabbed her father's arm. "Daddy, we have to go." "I know," he whispered, pulling her close. "We will." Ayu gave them 15 minutes to pack only necessities. Clothes, important documents, medications, personal items. Ayana ran to her room and grabbed her backpack, slipping in her notebook, the one she had used to record everything. It had become her shield. Before leaving the room, she paused. Her mother's old photograph sat on her bedside table. A warm, gentle smile, bright eyes, soft, features everything Mireille was not. She picked up the photo, hugging it tightly. "Mommy," she whispered, "please protect us." Downstairs, Kofi grabbed a small suitcase. His hands shook as he packed. Adwo packed hers too, refusing to leave their side. Mensah hadn't returned since the previous night. He was working with the police to track down Mireille's accomplices. Within minutes, 2 police officers arrived, escorting them out. One walked ahead, the other behind. Outside, a police car waited with its engine running. The house that once felt warm and full of memories now looked like a trap waiting to be sprung. The moment the car doors closed, Ayana exhaled shakily. But the tension didn't leave her body. She kept looking out the window, half expecting to see Mireille watching them from the shadows, half expecting to see those cold eyes again. The safe house wasn't a house at all, but a small, secure apartment building used specifically by law enforcement for high-risk victims. It was plain, heavily guarded, and quiet. The walls were thick windows, reinforced cameras installed in every hallway. A far cry from the luxury Mireille once pretended to belong to. IU led them inside. You'll stay here until we catch her. Officers will accompany you everywhere. Ayana clung to Kofi as they walked into the small apartment. It had 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and nothing else. But despite its simplicity, she felt grateful. At least Mireille didn't know this place. At least not yet. Kofi sat on the couch and pulled Ayana into his lap. He kissed the top of her head. Angel, listen to me. No matter what happens, I will not let anything happen to you. She nodded, burying her face into his shirt. IU cleared her throat gently. I need to ask Ayana a few questions. Kofi stiffened. She's been through a lot. Can it wait? IU shook her head. The things she overheard might be crucial to tracking Mireille's next move. It can't wait. Ayana took a deep breath. I can do it. They sat around the small dining table. IU opened her notebook. Ayana, you said Mireille talked about others. Did she mention names? Ayana squeezed her hands. No, just others. She said there were others like her, people she worked with. IU nodded. And the man with the scar, you heard him say something specific that night. Ayana closed her eyes, remembering the words that haunted her dreams. No mistakes this time, Adwoa flinched. This time, meaning she has a track record. IU scribbled notes quickly. Was there anything else? The inspector asked gently. A long silence. Ayana bit her lip. Then she whispered, she said she wanted Daddy dead, and that I was expendable. Kofi closed his eyes tightly, pain washing over his face. IU gave a small nod. Thank you, Ayana. That helps more than you know. The girl lowered her head. Her voice shook. Inspector, do you really think she'll come back? IU paused for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Ayana, people like her, people who are driven by greed, rage, and obsession, they don't quit easily. But we will catch her. That's a promise. Ayana nodded slowly. But deep in her heart, she sensed something else, something darker. Mireille wasn't coming back because she wanted revenge. She was coming back because she wanted to finish the plan no matter the cost. That night, they all tried to sleep. Kofi laid on the bed with Ayana curled against him. Adwoa slept in the second room with the door slightly ajar. 2 officers guarded the hallway outside. But sleep did not come easily. At around 2 a.m., Kofi stirred. He had been awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything he had missed, every warning he had ignored, every moment he had looked into Mireille's face and seen something loving that wasn't real at all. He sat up and gazed at his daughter. Even in sleep, she looked troubled. Her tiny fists were clenched, her eyebrows furrowed, as though fighting nightmares. He covered her with the blanket and quietly stepped into the hallway. IU was sitting at the table typing on her laptop. She looked up. Couldn't sleep. No, Kofi whispered. I don't know how I could close my eyes knowing she's still out there. IU nodded sympathetically. We're doing everything we can. Patrols have doubled. Checkpoints are active. We're searching every known connection she has. Kofi sank into a chair. I was so blind she destroyed our peace, our home, our sense of safety. Kofi IU said gently, please remember, Mireille is a professional manipulator. She chooses victims who are lonely, grieving, or vulnerable. She knows exactly what to say, exactly which weakness to exploit. No one is too smart to be deceived by someone like her. It still doesn't make it easier, he whispered. IU closed her laptop. It won't. Not for a while. But your daughter, she saved your life. Most children would have been terrified into silence, but she fought. Kofi smiled weakly. She has her mother's courage. Suddenly, a loud bang rattled the door. Kofi froze. I shot to her feet, hand already on her gun. Another bang, then a voice. I know you're in there. Cold. Familiar. Terrifying. Kofi's heart stopped. It was Mireille. Ayana bolted awake inside the room, eyes wide with terror, as the voice echoed through the apartment. She whispered, Daddy, she found us. Outside the door came another whisper, this time almost gentle. I'm not leaving until I finish what I started. For a moment, no one in the apartment moved. The world seemed to hold its breath. That voice, smooth, cold, venomous, seeped through the cracks of the reinforced door like poison smoke. Ayana's blood turned to ice. She clutched the edge of the blanket with trembling fingers, her small body rigid with fear. Ayu was the first to snap into action. She signaled sharply to the two officers stationed in the hallway. Positions, now! Both men drew their weapons and took strategic stances around the door. Their faces were pale, but determined this was no longer an ordinary case. This was a hunt, and the predator had arrived at their doorstep. Kofi stumbled backward, his heart pounding so loudly he could barely hear anything else. How? How did she find us? This location is confidential. Ayu didn't answer. She didn't know, and that made the situation infinitely more dangerous. Daddy, Ayana whispered from the bedroom doorway. She didn't step out. She couldn't. Her legs refused to move. Kofi rushed to her, scooping her into his arms protectively. I'm here. I'm here, Angel. Nothing will happen to you. But even as he said it, fear gnawed through his voice, because he knew this woman had slipped through police custody. She had accomplices willing to risk their lives for her. She had a network, and she had a deadly obsession. Another bang rattled the door harder this time. I know you're in there, Murray's voice cooed, dripping with malice. Kofi, sweetheart, open the door. Let's talk. The officers exchanged a look. She was taunting them. She wasn't afraid. She was here bold enough to approach a guarded safe house. Ayu shouted through the door, Mirail Decora, you're surrounded. Put down any weapons and step away from the entrance. This is your final warning. A moment of silence, then a soft laugh. Oh, Inspector, you think I came here alone? Ayu's stomach dropped. Before she could respond, something slammed into the upper hallway window. Glass cracked, then shattered violently as a masked man attempted to force his way in. Another entry, right side window, one officer yelled. He rushed down the hall toward the intruder, while Ayu and the second officer guarded the front door. The apartment erupted in chaos. Adwoa Kofi shouted, inside the bedroom, lock the door. Adwa grabbed Ayana and pulled her inside, shutting it quickly. Kofi followed and pushed a dresser in front of the door. Ayana's heart felt like a frantic bird beating against her ribs. Voices echoed from the hallway, shouts, commands, the sound of a struggle, fists slamming into drywall, glass crunching under boots. A man's scream ruptured the air. Then silence. A heavy, ominous silence. Inside the bedroom, Ayana whimpered. Adwo held her, tightly whispering prayers under her breath. Kofi pressed his ear against the wall, trying to decipher what was happening. His entire body shook with helplessness. His daughter was trapped. His sister was terrified. And a woman he once trusted was trying to kill them all. Suddenly, footsteps, slow dragging, coming down the hall. A knock on the bedroom door, soft, mocking. Little Ayana, Mirail's voice sang sweetly. Come out, don't hide. You know I don't like hide and seek. Ayana covered her ears, shaking violently. Stop, stop, stop. Adwoa pulled her tighter. Kofi grabbed the nearest object, a lamp, and raised it like a weapon. If you touch my daughter, I swear, oh Kofi, Mirai replied through the door, sounding almost amused. You had your chance to save her. But you chose to betray me. You chose them instead of me. You tried to kill me, Kofi snapped. You forced my hand, she snarled. But don't worry. Tonight I finish everything. Before she could take another step, Ayu's voice thundered through the hall. My real, put your hands where I can see them. A scuffle ensued. Heavy impacts rattled the walls. Boots scraped. Something metallic clattered to the floor. Kofi held his breath. Then a gunshot exploded through the apartment. Ayana screamed. Adwo gasped. Kofi's heart nearly stopped. Ayu, shouted suspect down. I repeat, suspect down. But another voice, a man's voice, roared in pain, followed by more commotion. This wasn't over. Another man, another accomplice, was still inside. Kofi grabbed the lamp tighter. Stay behind me. The doorknob rattled violently. Bang! The door shook. Bang! Open up, a deep voice snarled. It wasn't Mirail. Ayana cried, Daddy, Daddy, he's coming. Kofi lifted the lamp with trembling hands. He was no fighter. But for his daughter, he would become one. Before the intruder could break through, a loud crash echoed behind him. Ayu had tackled the man into the opposite wall. A fight erupted again. Punches, struggling, a grunt of pain, another gunshot, then silence, a heavy, gasping breath. Ayu's voice trembled but remained strong. It's over. You're safe. Come out. Kofi removed the dresser cautiously and opened the door. The hallway was a scene of chaos. One officer lay unconscious on the floor but breathing. Another man, masked and armed, was handcuffed, face down, blood seeping from a gunshot wound in his leg. And just a few feet away lay Morale. Her shoulder was bandaged from the earlier gunshot. Her eyes blazed with wild fury. She was pinned beneath Ayu's knee, hands cuffed behind her back. But even defeated, she still smirked at Ayana, a smile devoid of humanity. "You think this ends now," she hissed. "It never ends." Ayu tightened the cuffs. "For you, it ends tonight." Officers rushed in, having secured the building perimeter, and hauled Murray to her feet. She fought like a rabid animal, screaming, kicking, spitting. Two officers dragged her toward the stairwell. Her final words echoed through the apartment, chilling every soul inside. "I will remember you." The officers forced her out of sight, and then silence. Real silence. For the first time since this nightmare began, Ayana burst into tears. Not out of fear now, but because the tension holding her tiny body together finally snapped. She ran into her father's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Kofi held her tightly, rocking her gently. "It's over, Angel. It's finally over." Adwa wiped tears from her own eyes. "Thank God." Ayu approached them, exhausted and shaking but alive. "She won't come near any of you again," Ayu said quietly. "This time she's going to a maximum security facility. No visitors, no communication. No accomplices." Kofi looked at her with profound gratitude. "Thank you. You saved us." Ayu shook her head. "No. Your daughter saved you. From the very beginning." Ayana sniffled, her voice small. "I just wanted Daddy to be safe. And you made sure of it," Ayu said gently. For the first time in weeks, the air felt breathable again. The nightmare had finally ended. Or so they hoped. After Murray was dragged out of the apartment screaming Iana's name, the silence that followed was haunting. Not peaceful, just empty. An absence of danger, but also an absence of certainty. The danger had been removed from the hallway, yet the fear she left clinging to the air would take much longer to fade. Kofi lifted Iana into his arms and carried her back into the bedroom. She was trembling uncontrollably, her small fingers clutching his shirt as if he were the only anchor keeping her from drowning. And in a way he was. "I'm here," he whispered repeatedly. "I'm here, Angel. You're safe now." But Ayana couldn't respond at first. Every time she tried, her breath hitched and her throat tightened. She wanted to believe her father's words, but Morale's last scream echoed inside her head. "I will remember you." Those words felt like claws dragging across her mind. Adwa entered the bedroom and sat beside them on the bed, eyes glistening. She stroked Ayana's back gently. "Let it out, sweet girl. Cry as much as you need. No one will blame you." And Ayana did. She cried into her father's chest until her tears soaked through his shirt. Kofi kissed the top of her head, tears forming in his own eyes. He hadn't allowed himself to cry in years, not since his wife's funeral, but now holding his daughter, he felt everything hit him at once. Fear, regret, shame, gratitude. The emotions tangled together until he couldn't distinguish one from the other. After several minutes, the panic inside Iana eased slightly. She pulled back, wiping her cheeks. "Daddy, is she really gone?" "Yes," Kofi said firmly. "She won't hurt you again." But the truth was more complicated, and they all knew it. Ayu entered the room next. Her uniform was torn at the sleeve, and she had a bruise forming on her jaw. But she stood tall, steady, the way only a seasoned officer could. "She's on her way to a maximum security prison," Ayu announced. "This time she won't escape." Kofi stood still, holding Ayana's hand. "How did she find us?" Ayu sighed. "We found a tracker hidden under your car's rear bumper, likely placed before her arrest. She probably had a lookout waiting to follow you to the safe house. That means she was planning this even before the wedding," Adwo muttered, shaking her head. "She's worse than any of us thought." "She's a predator," Ayu said simply. "And predators don't like losing." That truth settled over everyone like a dark fog. "What about the man with the scar?" Kofi asked. Ayu nodded. "He's in custody. Shot in the leg, but stable. He'll talk eventually." But something in her face betrayed her. A flicker of worry, a question unspoken. "What is it?" Adwoa pressed. Ayu hesitated. "We found his phone. There were messages from an unknown number, instructions. Plans. It suggests a larger operation. Murray wasn't working alone. There's a chance someone else out there knew about the wedding night plan." Iana's eyes widened in panic. She grabbed her father's hand tighter. "Are they coming too?" "No," Ayu said, gently kneeling beside her. "You're safe now." and will be guarding your family day and night. Nothing will happen to you." Ayanna swallowed hard. She wanted to believe her, but trust was hard when someone had already broken through a safe house once. Ayu stood. "I've arranged for you to move to another safe house, an even more secure one. This building has already been compromised." The idea of moving again made Ayanna's stomach churn, but she nodded. Anywhere was better than the place where Mireille had stood outside the door. The officers escorted them out, forming a protective circle. But even walking through the hallway felt terrifying. The broken window, the scuffed walls, the blood-stained tiles, the signs of the earlier fight were still there, refusing to let them forget how close they had come to losing everything. The new safe house was deeper into the countryside, tucked behind a security compound, with armed guards, floodlights, and a high steel perimeter fence. No one could enter without fingerprint and face recognition clearance. Inside, the atmosphere was different, not a home, not a hiding place, but a fortress. The kind designed for government witnesses, targeted individuals, or high-profile crime victims. As soon as they entered, Kofi collapsed onto the couch, covering his face with both hands. His body trembled. He had tried to stay strong for Ayanna, but now here around the people he trusted, his strength gave out. Adwoa sat beside him. "Brother, you can breathe now." "I don't know how," he whispered. "I don't know how to stop imagining what could have happened, what almost happened." Ayanna walked over and climbed onto his lap. She put her forehead against his. "You're alive," she whispered. "We're alive. That's what matters." Kofi closed his eyes, tears slipping down his cheeks. "You saved me, Angel. You saved both of us." "But Daddy," Ayanna whispered, voice small and shaken. "What if she had gotten inside the room?" Kofi held her tighter. "She didn't, and she won't. Ever again." But even he wasn't fully convinced. Adwoa stood and looked around the safe house. "We need to rest. Tomorrow will be a long day of statements and security plans." They all went to their assigned rooms. The guards outside patrolled every hour. Ayu and 2 officers stayed inside, sleeping in shifts. But sleep was impossible. Every creak made Ayanna flinch. Every gust of wind made Kofi look toward the door. Every whisper of leaves in the compound made Adwo clutch her blanket tighter. In the early hours of dawn, Ayanna slid off her bed and tiptoed into her father's room. He was awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. She climbed next to him without asking. He put his arm around her automatically. "Daddy," she whispered, "will we ever go home again?" He sighed softly. "Not for a while. But one day, when she's locked away for good." Ayanna looked at her hands. Her fingers trembled slightly. "I wasn't brave," she said. "I was scared the whole time." Kofi smiled sadly. "Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you are scared. And you did that, again and again." Ayanna leaned her head on his shoulder. "But Daddy..." "Yes. What if she escapes again?" Kofi didn't answer immediately, because deep inside, he feared that too. He swallowed hard, forcing his voice to steady. "Then I'll fight for you," Ayanna whispered. "And I'll fight for you too." He pulled her close, closing his eyes as the sunrise crept through the small window. And somewhere far away in the back of a high-security police van, Mireille opened her eyes in the darkness. Bruised, bandaged, but smiling. "You can lock me away," she muttered to herself, "but you'll never erase me." Her lips curled into a sickening grin. Not from their lives, not from his daughter's nightmares, and not from his heart. She closed her eyes again, letting the van rock her gently as the road stretched ahead. "This isn't over," she whispered. "Not by a long shot." But for now, the Kofi family didn't know that. All they knew was the fragile peace they held in their hands, a peace they prayed would last. The sun climbed slowly above the horizon, spreading pale gold across the countryside as morning settled over the secure compound. But inside the safe house, no one felt the warmth of a new day. The tension of the night still clung to the walls like a stubborn shadow. Ayanna woke, curled against her father, her cheek resting on his arm. For a moment before fully remembering where she was, she felt a strange sense of normalcy. Then the memories rushed back the hallway, fight Mireille's scream, the escape, the chase, the intrusion at the first safe house. Her body tensed instinctively. Kofi stirred beside her. "Good morning, Angel." Ayanna looked up at him, eyes still heavy from restless sleep. "Daddy, did you sleep?" "No," he admitted. "But I rested enough." He brushed a curl from her forehead. "How about you?" "I slept a little. But I had dreams." He cupped her cheek gently. "Nightmares." She nodded. Kofi's heart tightened. "You're safe now. Nothing can reach you here." But even while saying the words, he wasn't sure he believed them completely. Safety felt like a fragile illusion after everything they'd been through. They met Adwoa in the small kitchen where she attempted to make tea, but her hands trembled so much she spilled half of it on the counter. "Let me help, Kofi," said, taking the kettle from her. No, Adwoa insisted, though her voice wavered. "I'm fine. I'm just tired." The truth was she was terrified. Ayu entered moments later, already in uniform. Her face looked more hardened than yesterday, her eyes sharper. She carried a folder in one hand and walked toward them with purpose. "Good morning," she greeted. "I need to brief you all on new developments." Kofi instinctively pulled Iana closer. "What happened?" he asked. Ayu set the folder on the table. "After last night's ambush, we interrogated the accomplice, the man with the scar, Kweku Obin. He confessed to several details regarding the operation." Ayana leaned in, her small brows furrowed. "What did he say?" Ayu hesitated. Not because she didn't want to tell them, but because she wasn't sure how much to reveal to a child. Kofi noticed. "You can speak. She's been through enough lies already." Ayu nodded. "Fine." Kweku admitted that this operation wasn't just about killing you, Kofi. You were supposed to be the final step in a larger chain. Mireille, she works with a network specializing in targeting wealthy individuals. They infiltrate their lives, secure assets, and eliminate them. "That much we already knew," Adwoa said. "What else?" Ayu continued. "But there's more. They've already targeted others. Some escaped, some didn't." She opened the folder, revealing photos, faces of men and women, victims of the same pattern. "Mireille," she said, tapping one picture, was responsible for at least 2 deaths. "She left before the police could gather enough evidence. She's highly trained in manipulation." Kofi exhaled shakily. "And she had access to everything in my life. Finances, schedules, security details. Even this child." Ayana gripped his hand. Ayu added, "Her arrest last night wasn't just a win. It disrupted their entire operation. Which means they might come after us," Kofi murmured, completing her thought. Ayana froze. Ayu looked directly at her. "Not necessarily. These criminals only move when there's a high chance of success. Now that we know their methods, their patterns, and their faces, they'll scatter. They're cowards in the end." But Ayana didn't feel comforted. She couldn't remove the memory of Mireille's smile, twisted and hungry with vengeance, from her mind. Ayu closed the folder. "For now, your family will remain under protection. Officers will accompany you everywhere, including when giving formal statements today." Kofi nodded. "Thank you." Ayu glanced at Ayana. "And I want you to know something important, sweetheart." "Yes," Ayana whispered. "You are the reason your father is alive. Don't forget that." A soft warmth blossomed in Ayana's chest, but it was quickly overshadowed by uncertainty. Because courage didn't erase fear. They spent the next several hours at the police headquarters giving detailed statements. Ayana described everything she saw, heard, and sensed. Sometimes her voice cracked. Sometimes she paused to catch her breath. But she didn't hide anything. And the officers listened with a level of respect most adults rarely showed a child. After the interview, Inspector Ayu walked out with them and said, "We'll be monitoring the prison transfer closely. Mireille is being moved to a facility with the highest level of containment. She won't escape again." Ayana wanted so badly to believe those words. She tried. But fear clung like a stain. That evening, back at the safe house, the family tried to settle down. They watched a movie together, something silly and lighthearted, but none of them truly paid attention. Every time a floorboard creaked or the blinds rustled, they flinched. After dinner, Ayana sat by the window with the curtains slightly pulled back. The compound was peaceful, guards, patrolling lights glowing softly in the yard. Nothing seemed out of place. But inside her chest, her heart fluttered anxiously. Kofi joined her. "What's on your mind, Angel?" She hesitated. "Daddy, are we going to be okay?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "We survived the worst part. But what if she escapes again?" Her voice cracked. "What if someone else comes?" Kofi knelt in front of her, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. "Listen to me," he said softly. "Danger doesn't win just because it tries to scare you." Ayana blinked up at him. "Love wins," he continued. "Family wins. You are stronger than anything that woman can ever bring into our lives." Ayana's eyes filled with tears. "But I was so scared." Kofi pulled her into a warm embrace. "Being scared doesn't make you weak. It makes you human, and you fought anyway. That's bravery." She smiled faintly, pressing her forehead to his chest. Adwoa watched them from the kitchen, a small smile tugging at her lips. The wounds of the last few days were still fresh, but healing had begun. Later that night, long after Iana had fallen asleep in her father's arms, a guard approached the safe house with a phone in his hand. "Mr. Kofi," he said quietly, "a call came in for Inspector Ayu. It's urgent. We think you should hear this." Kofi gently laid Iana on the bed and followed the guard outside. Ayu was already on the porch speaking into her phone with a tone that made Kofi's stomach twist. "Yes, I understand. You're certain. Send me the footage, now." She hung up slowly. Kofi stepped forward. "What happened?" Ayu turned to him, her expression grim. "There was an incident during the prison transfer. Ice traveled down Kofi's spine." "No," he whispered. Ayu nodded solemnly. "Muriel didn't escape." "Then what happened?" Ayu took a breath. "She was attacked." Kofi blinked. "Attacked by who we don't know yet. Another inmate. Or perhaps someone sent to silence her. But she's alive barely." Kofi struggled to process this. Ayu continued. "She was found unconscious, severely injured in the prison hallway. Someone wanted her gone before she could talk." Kofi's face paled. "So her network, they're tying loose ends." "Exactly. And that means you and your daughter may still be targets, not because they want to kill you, but because they want to erase any witness who knows too much." Kofi felt the world spin around him. "So this isn't over," he whispered. Ayu answered quietly, "No, not yet." Inside the safe house, Iana stirred in her sleep, restless, uneasy, as though somewhere deep inside she sensed the storm wasn't done with them. Not by a long shot. The weight of Inspector Ayu's words sank into Kofi like a stone tossed into deep water. The ripples spread through his mind, fear, disbelief, dread, until they collided violently inside his chest. He gripped the railing of the porch to steady himself as the night breeze swept past, cool but offering no comfort. "Muriel was attacked," he repeated faintly. "Someone tried to silence her." Ayu nodded, her face carved with worry. "It fits the pattern. Once a criminal operation starts collapsing, the organization removes anyone who could expose them." Muriel became a liability. Kofi rubbed his forehead, overwhelmed. "But why attack her now? Why not escape with her?" Ayu crossed her arms. "Because they don't want her alive. They want secrets alive, not people. And if they're willing to eliminate her, we can assume they'll come after every loose end." Kofi's voice cracked. "You mean us?" "Yes," Ayu said grimly. "You, Iana, and Adwoa." Inside the safe house, Iana slept, curled around her father's pillow, her cheek resting against his shirt sleeve for comfort. She looked peaceful, far too peaceful for a child who had seen the things she had seen. The thought of her being in danger again pushed something fierce and protective through Kofi. "No. Not again. Not ever." He turned back to Ayu. "What do we need to do, Ayu?" Took a deep breath. "For now, we increase security. No one leaves the compound without an escort. No windows unlocked. No doors opened unless cleared. And absolutely no outside contact unless routed through me." "And longer term," Kofi whispered. "We need to find the group behind her," Ayu said. "Cut them off at the source. Once they're dismantled, you'll truly be safe." Kofi swallowed hard. "Then let's do it." Ayu looked at him thoughtfully. "I will. But Kofi, catching criminals like this is not simple. They're shadows, ghosts. They hide behind false names, stolen identities, disposable phones. Muriel was only one face in a larger machine." Kofi clenched his jaw. "They came after my child. I will do whatever it takes." Ayu nodded once. "Good, because you may need to." She turned and spoke quietly with the night guards, then returned inside to brief her officers. Kofi lingered on the porch, staring out at the darkness beyond the compound lights. Not long ago, he thought he had lost everything when his wife passed. Then he thought he found hope with Muriel until she revealed the nightmare beneath her beauty. And now he faced a new unseen threat. He whispered into the night, "I won't let anyone take her." Not again. Inside the safe house, the tension returned like a thick fog. Adwo sat on the couch, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the wall as she absorbed the news. "So even with her behind bars, we aren't safe." Ayu shook her head. "Not yet, but we're getting closer." "How badly is she injured?" Adwoa asked. Serious, Ayu replied. "Multiple fractures, internal bleeding. She was taken to a secure prison hospital. She'll survive, but she won't be moving anytime soon." "So she can't come after the child?" Adwo pressed. "No," Ayu said, "but others might." Iana's door was slightly ajar. She hadn't woken yet, but the adults lowered their voices anyway. Ayu continued. We need to assume they know Murray failed, and criminals don't tolerate failure. Kofi sat heavily on the armchair. Why us? Why continue? If Murray can't talk, if she's as good as useless now, why still target us? Ayu leaned forward. Because they don't know what she told you. They don't know what Iana overheard. They don't know what evidence we've collected. Loose ends get tied. A chill rippled through the room. Kofi whispered. Then what's our next step? Ayu answered simply. We go on offense. Everyone stared at her. She explained, until now we've been defending, running, hiding, surviving. But criminals like this thrive in the shadows. If we want them gone, we have to drag them out, Howard Woa asked. Ayu pulled out a small USB drive. This contains Murray's journal scans and encrypted data we found on her phone. Names, meeting spots, transfer logs. It's incomplete, but it's a start. And you think you can track them? Kofi asked. With digital forensics, yes, Ayu replied. But we need someone who knows the criminal world to help decipher connections, Kweku Kofi asked. He's talking, Ayu said. Slowly, painfully. But he's too scared of the group to reveal everything at once. The moment she said scared, Iana's bedroom door creaked open. She stood there hugging her pillow, eyes wide and frightened. Daddy, why are you talking about that man? She whispered. Kofi rushed to her, lifting her into his arms. Angel, you should be sleeping. I heard shouting, she murmured, and talking, and her name. Ayu kneeled, so she was level with the girl. Sweetheart, nothing is happening right now. You're still safe. Is she coming? Iana whispered, voice quivering. No, Ayu said firmly. Are other bad people coming? She asked. Ayu hesitated just for a second, but that second was enough for Iana to understand. They are, she whispered. Kofi hugged her tightly. Angel, I won't let anything happen to you. Promise, she asked, one tear sliding down her cheek. I promise with my life, Kofi said. And I promise with mine, Adwoa added, taking Iana's hand. And I promise with my badge, Ayu said quietly. For a moment, the child was surrounded by a circle of protection, love, family, and law enforcement. It helped, but only a little. Because fear doesn't vanish with words, but courage doesn't vanish either. Later that night, after the compound settled into a restless quiet, Iana sat beside her window again. She gazed at the stars, the same stars she used to watch with her mother when she was little. Mama used to tell her that stars were reminders that light could still exist in darkness. Now, Iana clung to that memory harder than ever. Kofi entered the room and sat beside her on the floor. Can't sleep. She shook her head. I'm scared to close my eyes. What if they come when I'm sleeping? Kofi placed an arm around her shoulders. If danger comes, you won't face it alone. She leaned against him. Daddy, why do people become so bad? He thought for a long moment. Some people lose their way. Some choose greed. Some choose darkness because they think it will make them powerful. But none of that is stronger than what we have. Love, she whispered. Yes, he said softly. Love, truth, family. Those are your weapons. Iana took a deep breath, her heart steadier now. Daddy, she whispered, I want to help. Kofi smiled sadly. You've helped enough for a lifetime. But I'm not done, Iana insisted. If there are bad people out there, we have to find them before they find us. Kofi blinked, surprised by the fierce determination in her voice. You're 9, he said gently. I'm 9, she agreed. But I'm also your daughter. And Mommy always said, our family is stronger when we stand together. Those words pierced Kofi's heart. He closed his eyes, remembering his wife's voice, her wisdom, her strength. You're just like her, he whispered. Iana smiled through lingering tears. Then she looked out the window at the glowing lights of the compound and said something that made Kofi's breath catch. If they're hunting us, then maybe it's time we stop running. And Kofi realized with startling clarity, his little girl was no victim. She was a fighter, just like her mother, just like he needed to become. Tomorrow the investigation would begin. Tomorrow they would hunt for the truth. But tonight they held each other under the safety of the stars, hoping the light would guide them through the darkness waiting ahead. Morning arrived cloaked in an uneasy quiet, as if even the sun hesitated to rise over the tension lingering at the safe house. The compound was awake before the first light touched the horizon. Guards switching shifts, surveillance teams reviewing footage, Inspector Ayu pacing with her phone pressed to her ear, while officers scrambled with clipped urgency. Inside the apartment, Kofi sat at the kitchen table with a cup of untouched coffee. His eyes were red-rimmed from a night without sleep. Yet his posture upright alert made something clear. Fear had turned into resolve. Across from him, Iana sat hugging her notebook. The same notebook she used to record Mireille's every suspicious action. Her fingers traced the edges softly as if gathering courage from the pages inside. She wasn't trembling anymore. She wasn't shrinking beneath fear's weight. She sat tall, her expression steady. Only 9 yet, carrying the kind of gravity that adults struggle to manage. Adwoa entered the kitchen next, tying her scarf tightly around her hair. She gave both father and daughter a firm nod. Today, she said, we cooperate, we focus, and we strike where it hurts. Kofi managed a faint smile. You sound like Mensa, she snorted. Well, the man does know how to deal with trouble. A knock at the door drew their attention. Before Kofi could move, Ayu entered with 2 folders under her arm. Her expression was intense, tired, but sharpened by purpose. We have a breakthrough, she announced. Immediately, Ayana leaned forward. What did you find? Kofi asked. Ayu set the folders on the table. We analyzed data from Mireille's confiscated phone. Whoever attacked her, they wanted to erase connections, not steal information. But they missed something important. She opened the first folder. Inside were printed images, timestamps, financial logs, and blurry screenshots. This, she said, pointing to a low-resolution photo of 2 shadowy figures, is a meeting between Mireille and a man we believe is the operation's handler. She referred to him by the code name, the Black Vine. The Black Vine, Adwoa repeated. Sounds like some crime boss from a movie. Ayu nodded. He's real, very real, and very dangerous. Kofi exhaled slowly. Where do we find him? Ayu hesitated. That's the difficult part. He operates through layers, fake identities, burner phones, proxies. No one meets him directly except his most trusted members. Ayana's voice was barely above a whisper. Did Mireille ever meet him? Ayu opened the second folder. We believe so. This location here. She pointed to a map with a red circle. An abandoned luxury villa outside the old industrial district. Mireille visited multiple times. Always alone, always at night. Adwoa frowned. Why wasn't this place raided earlier? Because we only discovered its relevance today, Ayu explained. And now with Mireille incapacitated and the accomplice interrogated, we have enough evidence to move. Move, Kofi's heart pounded. You mean raid it? Yes. She looked directly at him. Tonight. A thick silence filled the room. Why tonight? Adwoa asked. Because their network is collapsing, Ayu said. The failed hit on Mireille means someone inside the organization knows their structure is compromised. They will scatter, destroy evidence, disappear. If we wait even a day, we lose our chance. Kofi leaned back, exhaling shakily. So this ends tonight. Ayu met his eyes. Yes, one way or another. Ayana's small hand reached across the table and held his. Daddy, she said quietly, we have to help. He squeezed her hand gently. Angel, this is dangerous. You've done enough. She shook her head. But I know things. Things no one else paid attention to. The way Mireille spoke, the phrases she used, the places she went, they might matter. Ayu nodded in agreement. Actually, she's right. Children see details adults overlook. And right now, details might save lives. Kofi closed his eyes, struggling between fear and pride. His daughter wasn't a fragile flower, she was a beacon. He didn't want her near danger, but he also couldn't deny that she had insights no one else had. All right, he said quietly. But only if she stays far from the raid site. Ayu nodded. Of course. She won't be anywhere near the operation, but her knowledge can help us prepare. For the next hour, the safe house transformed into a war room. Ayu spread out maps, floor plans, digital blueprints. Officers connected laptops, reviewed routes, and coordinated with tactical units. The abandoned villa had 3 entrances, multiple blind spots, and potential escape tunnels underneath. It was built for luxury, but its isolation made it perfect for criminal activity, and perfect for ambushes. Ayana sat beside Adwoa, flipping through her notebook. She always talked about the cellar, she murmured, and the crates, and the night deliveries. Ayu wrote everything down. This helps. It matches the suspicious activity reported near the villa. At one point, Ayana pointed to a page she had drawn weeks ago. A sketch of a symbol she had once seen on Mireille's notebook. What's this? Ayu asked. A vine, Ayana said. She always drew it when talking to the scarred man. Ayu froze. This symbol, this matches an insignia found in previous unsolved cases. The room darkened with realization. This operation is bigger than we thought, Ayu whispered. And far older. By late afternoon, the police task force was assembled outside the compound. Armed officers, armored vehicles, communication techs, everything needed for a high-risk raid. Before they left, Ayu gathered Kofi Adwoa and Iana in the living room. "Stay here," she instructed. "No one opens the door. Not for anyone. Your security detail will remain outside. We'll radio back once the raid is complete." Kofi nodded grimly. "And if something goes wrong," Ayu placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then we make sure it doesn't." When she left, the atmosphere in the safe house changed again. Not frantic, not fearful, just heavy. Waiting is its own kind of battle. Night fell fast, wrapping the compound in a muted glow of security lights. Kofi paced the living room like a caged lion. Adwo sat on the couch, prayer beads in hand. Ayana sat near the window watching the guards, watching the shadows, watching for anything that didn't belong. At 8:27 p.m. the radio crackled. "We're at the target. No movement outside." Preparing to breach. Kofi grasped the radio tightly, knuckles white. Minutes crawled by, then entry team in. Clearing corridor. First floor clear, cellar entrance located. Ayana squeezed her pillow, then suddenly static, a sharp burst of shouting. Then shots fired, suspects fleeing, repeat suspects fleeing, team 2 block the south exit, they're escaping through the tunnel. "We need backup." Now Kofi's legs nearly buckled. "No, no." Adwoa covered her mouth. Ayana clutched her father's hand so tightly it hurt. Another shout came through. "We found documents, tons of them, records, logs, photos. This is their operational hub." Relief flickered. "Then wait, there's someone alive down here." More shouting. Then a voice strained, breathless, terrified. "It's her." Everyone froze. Ayana whispered. Her Ayu's voice, shocked, shaken, came through the radio. "Mireille, she's here." Kofi felt the world tilt sideways. "But how she was in the hospital," Ayu panted into the radio. "I don't know how she got here. But she's alive. Barely. They tried to kill her before we arrived." Silence. "Then she's requesting to speak to one person." Kofi's throat tightened. Who? Ayu's answer came like a ghost whisper. "She wants to speak to Ayana." For several long seconds, no one in the safe house moved. The room seemed to tilt, the air thinning into something sharp enough to cut. Ayu's voice still crackled through the radio, but her words felt distant, muffled, unreal. "She wants to speak to Ayana." Iana's eyes widened. Her breath hitched small, sharp. Adwo immediately pulled the girl behind her. "Absolutely not." Over my dead body, Kofi snatched the radio from the table, voice trembling with a rage he had not felt in years. "You, that woman nearly killed my child. Why would you even repeat that? Ayana is not talking to her." End of discussion. There was a pause on the other end. When Ayu spoke again, her voice carried a weight, suggesting she had expected such a reaction. "Kofi, listen. I would never allow a child to be placed in danger. But this situation is not what it seems." "What does that mean?" Kofi demanded. Another pause. "She's dying." Silence collapsed over the room, heavier than before. "She lost a lot of blood before we arrived," Ayu continued. "Multiple stab wounds done by her own allies. They wanted her silenced. She's barely conscious. Doctors say she won't survive the night." Ayana stepped forward slightly from behind Adwoa, her small hand gripping the older woman's clothes. "She's dying." Her voice carried no joy, no relief, only confusion and something deeper. The ache of a child who had seen too much too soon. Ayu went on. Before losing consciousness again, she whispered something. She said, "Let me speak to the girl. The girl knows what they don't." Adwo scoffed. Manipulation, even on her deathbed. Kofi swallowed hard. Why my daughter?" She didn't explain, Ayu said, but she refused to speak to anyone else. Not the doctors, not the officers, not even me. She only said, "The girl. It has to be her." Iana's heartbeat hammered in her ears. Kofi rubbed his face with both hands. "No, absolutely not. I've failed her once by trusting that monster. I will not let her anywhere near Iana again. Not even with her last breath. Kofi, no." His voice was fierce, raw. "End this conversation." Ayu exhaled slowly. "I understand. But what if she knows something important? Something that helps us stop the rest of the network? Something only Iana can confirm." Adwa slammed her palm on the table. "No. She almost took this child's life. You think we care about that network more than her safety?" Iana had been quiet all this time, but now she spoke, her voice trembling yet surprisingly steady. "Daddy." Kofi turned instantly. "No, Angel. You don't even need to finish that sentence. But maybe Tears gathered in her eyes. Maybe she wants to tell me something important, something only I can understand. Kofi knelt in front of her, gripping her shoulders. You don't owe her anything, Iyanna. Nothing. I know, the girl whispered. But if she's dying, maybe she wants to tell the truth. Or warn us about something. Adwa shook her head. Child, some people die as they lived in darkness. But sometimes, Iyanna whispered, people tell the truth when they know they won't live to lie anymore. Her words, soft but piercing, hung in the room. Kofi closed his eyes. Iyanna, you're brave. Too brave sometimes. But I won't let you. I don't want to go alone, she said quickly. If I go, you come with me. He opened his eyes, stunned. You're my daddy. You won't let anything happen to me. Right. Kofi's throat tightened. Never, he whispered. And Annie too. Inspector Au. Everyone. I won't be alone. I'll be safe. Tears blurred Kofi's vision. How could a 9-year-old be so gentle, so wise after so much fear? How could he deny her when she wasn't being reckless but compassionate? Ayu's voice came through the radio again. Kofi, it's your decision. But if we're going to interrogate the network's weakest link before she dies, this is the moment. A long, heavy silence followed. Finally, Kofi stood, clutching the radio voice, low but resolute. We're coming. But if she so much as looks at my child wrong, I will. You won't need to, Ayu said quietly. Just hurry. The drive to the abandoned villa felt like moving through a dream, cold, heavy, surreal. Floodlights illuminated the dark estate, casting harsh shadows against crumbling walls. Police cars filled the courtyard. Officers stood in tight formations, their faces grim. As Kofi stepped out of the car with Iyanna holding his hand, heads turned. Whispers spread. They all knew who this little girl was, the reason the criminal plot had unraveled. Ayu met them at the entrance, her expression a mix of relief and worry. She's inside. But prepare yourselves. Her condition is bad. Together they walked down a dim hallway toward the cellar. The air smelled of dust, blood, and something metallic. At the end of the corridor, 2 guards stepped aside. Only the father, the aunt, the girl, and the inspector, the guard, said gently. Everyone else stays out. Kofi squeezed Iyanna's hand until she looked up at him. No matter what she says, he whispered, I'm right here. You're safe. They descended the steps. The cellar was lit by one single lamp, and on a mattress in the corner lay Morel. Her skin was pale, lips cracked, hair matted with sweat and blood. Her once perfect makeup had washed away, leaving behind a human face, a broken, battered one. She looked nothing like the glamorous predator who had stalked their lives, but when her eyes opened, those eyes were the same. Dark, sharp, alive. She coughed weakly, a trace of red at the corner of her mouth. Well, her voice rasped. You came. Kofi stepped in front of Iyanna, instinctively shielding her. Morel's gaze drifted past him to the child. Let her come closer. No, Kofi growled. I can't speak loudly, Morel murmured. If you want the truth, the real truth, she needs to hear it. Iyanna took a small step forward. Daddy, it's okay. Kofi's heart nearly broke. But he moved aside slightly, staying close enough to grab her in an instant. Iyanna approached until she stood a few feet from Morel. The dying woman smiled faintly, not with malice this time, but with something strange, almost painful. You, she whispered, are remarkable. Iyanna remained silent. Morel continued, I never hated you. Not really. A pause. Not at first, Kofi clenched his fists. I hated what you saw in me, she went on. I hated that you saw through me before anyone else ever did. Iyanna's voice was small. Why did you want to hurt Daddy? Morel blinked slowly, as if the question reached something deep in her chest. It wasn't supposed to be like that, she whispered. I joined the group when I was young. Too young. They promised me family, protection, purpose. They made me believe love was weakness. Made me become this. She coughed again, wincing. The Black Vine, he recruits lost people. Broken ones. People who will do anything to feel powerful. Ayu stepped forward. Who is he? Where is he? Morel's eyes shifted toward her. The fading light in her gaze flickered. You'll find him where the first transaction happened. She struggled to breathe. The place where vines grow, but never see the sun. Ayu scribbled the words furiously. Kofi demanded, why involve me? Why target us? Morel's lips trembled. Your company, your land, your influence. You were their prize. I was just a tool. Then she turned her gaze to Iyanna again. You, were the only thing I didn't expect. A weak smile ghosted her face. And the only thing I ever admired. Ayana blinked, confused. Why me? Because you fought, Mireille whispered. Because you refused to let fear silence you. I never had that courage. Her eyes glistened. Kofi's breath halted. You're nothing like me, Mireille said softly. You still have light. Ayana felt tears rise, not out of sympathy, but out of the strange sadness of seeing someone collapse under the weight of their own ruin. Mireille exhaled shakily. I have one last thing to say. Everyone leaned in slightly. She looked directly at Ayana. Don't let the darkness that touched me ever touch you. Protect your father, protect yourself, and trust your instincts. Her voice quivered. They will save your life one day. Ayana swallowed. Mireille. The dying woman managed a final whisper. Goodbye, little lion. Then her eyes closed. A final breath escaped her cracked lips. And Mireille, the woman who tried to destroy them, the woman who haunted their nightmares, was gone. A silence heavy as iron filled the room. Kofi lifted Ayana into his arms, burying his face in her hair as tears fell freely. Adwa wiped her eyes. It's over. But Ayu shook her head slowly. No, she murmured. This chapter is over. But the story she left behind is just beginning. Ayana held her father tighter, whispering, Daddy, let's go home. And for the first time, Kofi believed they actually could. Sometimes the greatest courage is found in the smallest hearts. In this story, a 9-year-old girl refused to let fear silence her. She trusted her instincts even when adults doubted her, and in doing so, she saved not just her father but herself. Life often brings people who wear beautiful masks but hide dangerous intentions. This reminds us to listen to the quiet warnings inside us, the intuition that whispers long before danger shows its face. It teaches us that love and truth are stronger than manipulation, and that even broken people can choose a different path in their final moments. Protect your loved ones, stand firm in the face of fear, and never underestimate the truth spoken by a brave heart. If you were moved by this story, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from. And if you enjoy emotional African folktale dramas, kindly subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories.